Hi everyone, I'm Steve Kearns, Global Head of Content for LinkedIn's ads business, and welcome to this month's Collective Conversation. Each month we'll be chatting with a LinkedIn executive or top industry thought leader to explore the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities shaping the B2B marketing universe. And this month we're talking about B2B buying. So I would love to go ahead and kick off and introduce our guests. So maybe I will pass it to you, Mimi, to introduce yourself.
Hi, Steve. Yes, I'm Mimi Turner, and I'm the Head of Marketplace Innovation at LinkedIn.
And I'm Jan Schwartz, and I'm the Senior Director leading the Marketplace Innovation team at LinkedIn, working closely with Mimi.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. Super excited to dig into the conversation around B2B buying and how that universe is changing over time. Jan, you mentioned that you believe that B2B buying is really reaching an inflection point, and you've used this analogy to describe that inflection point, which references a very famous movie from 1999 called The Matrix. I'm sure many of our listeners and viewers will have watched that film. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what B2B marketing and B2B buying has to do with The Matrix.
Yes, so we really do believe that B2B is facing a matrix moment. Many of you know this movie. It's a science fiction movie, and there's a key moment in the movie where a character played by Lawrence Fishburne offers you two pills and says, you can either take the red pill and find out how things really work and how what the reality is of the world we live in, or you can take the blue pill and keep living in this illusion that is very pleasant and easy to understand, but actually you're trapped in that. You won't be able to fight for your freedom. You have to take the red pill and find out how things really are. And in B2B, that is very much the case. I think we are facing a lot of different myths, like blue pill myths that hold us back if we continue to focus on them. And I would love to go through some of them, starting with the individual buyer as the focus of attention. I think that's a key thing that we need to move away from and move much more towards a group mindset, because all buying decisions in B2B are actually group buying decisions.
So talk to me a little bit more. Maybe I'll pass it to you, Mimi, to talk about the individual buyer and why we've used that for so long and why that's actually the wrong unit of analysis for B2B. Talk to me a little bit more about how group buying is now taking center stage.
I think it's worth going back a little bit because you're absolutely right. The blue pill is seductive. It's seductive and it's very plausible. And the reason it's plausible is because we have about 100 years of using the individual buyer as the method and the unit of consumption in marketing. And that has really been what B2C is. Everything from those kind of really old Coca-Cola adverts to soda to trainers. It's really clear what the value exchange is. The thing about professional purchasing that makes it different is that, especially at the even mid-size purchases require lots of different people who come to the purchase process with different skill sets and have to get to an agreement. No agreement equals no deal. So this model that we've had that's based on the individual just doesn't work. I mean, it just is crunched by the reality of group-based decision-making. And when groups of people make decisions, they make trade-offs in order to agree. And none of those trade-offs are factored into traditional marketing. So I think, and Steve, I know you think this too, so I think the three of us think that this is what makes B2B such an interesting and challenging and ultimately winnable. Once you apply this model of group-based decision-making, even if you stop there, and we recommend you don't stop there, but try some other things, but that will give you a filter that will make that much more successful. And that's why I'd make the case that group-based buying, that's the red pill. If you're in B2B, you have to understand that that's the model that you're working with. And if you understand that, everything starts to be more successful.
You think about the historical way we've done B2B marketing, and so much of that is focused on building personas against your, let's say, target buyer. The idea that you're introducing here is that we actually need to think about marketing to each of these individuals such that they can then reach a decision as a group, which means deal, which means your deal progresses, versus say you target an individual and that individual is the only one that's a champion inside your organization, you might not necessarily get the deal across the line. So it's really the idea that you need to think about everybody who's going to be involved in this decision, and also, quite honestly, the psychology behind what drives these decisions forward. Because we always talk about this in consumer marketing, that people make very emotional decisions on, hey, this shampoo is going to make my hair shinier and I will feel prettier, therefore I'm going to buy it. Not necessarily a rational decision. People always like to think that this B2B buying is hyper rational. And in the reality of the situation, I think a lot of organizational psychology or psychological principles still apply. So it's fascinating. I really am excited to continue clicking into this. But thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like that's another, blue pill is kind of the world as we think we want it to be, but the red pill is how things really work, right? The blue pill here is, oh, it's all about specs and features of my product. And if I can advertise the specs and features of my product to an individual that's making the decision, who's the decision maker, then I win. That's completely untrue. You actually have to make yourself easier to buy as a business to a group of individuals who collectively have to have confidence that you're the right company to buy from. And actually, the products and specs and features are a necessary requirement, but they're not sufficient for you to actually close the deal. And if we look at the reality of B2B marketing today, we are so obsessed with generating clicks, generating leads, that we often forget to build the collective confidence of the whole buyer group. And that's incredibly important if you want to win.
Yes. So it was really interesting in the research that we did with Bain almost a year ago now. We looked at large technology purchases in large organizations, and we found that you were more than 20 times more likely to be bought if everybody in the buyer group had heard of the vendor on day one, than if even just the recommending expert function knew you on day one. And that's kind of like a mind-blowing idea, really, because we always think that the experts are really the deal champions, that they're going to work internally and carry everybody along. And that's why we try to target them in our marketing. But actually, we found out that you're more likely to be buyable, to make people feel that the decision to buy you was a reasonably safe one if you're well known, even compared to if you're incredibly innovative, or you have some new features and product things that experts think are amazing. And we found that quite a profound insight. Well, I think I'm going to let Jan tell the story, but we tried to think about why this was. Like, why is recognition all the way through our research something that was so much more persuasive than any individual marketing measurement will ever tell you? This thing about shared knowledge made decisions much more defendable, and essentially that's what buyers want to buy.
I think the fundamental challenge we have in B2B marketing is that the role of brand in making you more buyable is so poorly understood. And yet we all know that there's a difference between, hiring Goldman Sachs as an investment bank or hiring Steve and Mimi and Jan's investment shack, right? Like, you're not, of course you're going to go with Goldman Sachs because that's a brand you've heard of, right? It's so basic that we kind of miss that in the picture. Like the blue pill moment is, oh, it's all about just, performance marketing and specs and features and rational data. But actually what creates the collective confidence amongst the buyer group is, this is a business we can do business with. This is people like us buy from a company like this. That sort of cultural context is incredibly important and is essential to winning. So it's not about having the best product. It's about having the brand, the company that's easiest to buy from, and doing whatever you can to burnish your reputation and your relevance and how well known you are with the whole buyer group, not just the person you think is the individual decision maker. Because as Mimi just said earlier, that individual decision maker is not going to buy from a company that the rest of the buyer group hasn't heard of. They're not going to take that risk. We don't want to get fired for buying the wrong thing, and that's why we get back to no one ever got fired for buying IBM or Goldman Sachs or hiring McKinsey or Bain or any other reputable firm. Like there's a reason why we believe in this, and it's actually good sense to believe in strong brands and to build strong brands and to explain to the CEO and the CFO and the CRO how important it is to be easy to buy, because easy to buy means you're going to close more deals faster.
What's really interesting about this is because it is so obvious. And I've yet to be in a meeting with a B2B CMO and they say, oh God, I can't explain to my CFO why I'm doing all this bottom of the funnel stuff. They just want me to invest in the top of the funnel because they know that actually us being well known as a trusted brand is the most important driver of us being bought. In fact, that's the Alice in Wonderland conversation that you never have. The conversation that you have is, how can I be more efficient at the bottom of the funnel to close more deals faster? And the answer is, maybe there's a way, but it's really the long way round. I mean, it's the long way round. It's like going from London to Dublin via New York, Los Angeles, Hawaii, Bombay, Serbia, Amsterdam, and then back to London. It's that long. That is the long way around. And that's what we're doing right now. Actually, what you want to do is to have a sense within the peer group and the group that you want to sell to, that buying your business will be safe for their business. And that is entirely a different set of marketing objectives for which there are strategies and tools that marketers can use now.
This has been a wonderful conversation. I'd love to get a little bit more tactical with you both to understand, what does this actually mean for the B2B marketer or the B2B marketing leader? If we've established that if someone walks away from this conversation saying, wow, that's a really relevant insight, that the brand that's remembered is the brand that's bought, and we need to build collective confidence among the buying group. I'd love to understand what that actually means in practice for what folks should do after listening to this conversation. And then ultimately, how do you as a marketing leader go and build that collective confidence so that you are more aligned with your CEO, with your CFO, with your CRO, to ensure that marketing is, even with greater investment in brand, considered a valuable contributor or even driver, if you will, to the P&L?
Yeah, I think a key thing for B2B marketers to understand is that the old linear model that's like a vending machine to understand B2B marketing is broken. So it's no longer the case that you put money in at the top and then at the bottom leads come out and these leads automatically convert into sales. That's just too simplistic for what's going on in the world. The buying group is much more complex than it has ever been. And with things like AI coming in, there's going to be even more disintermediation happening, where AI agents, seller agents, buyer agents, etc., they're going to match buyers and sellers much more effectively. So the way you stand out in that world is you build relationships, you build the collective confidence of the buyer group through strong brands and relationships and endorsements and engaging in the community and being relevant, being culturally relevant as a brand and as a business to make it easier to buy. That's not a linear deterministic process. That's much more of a dynamic and probabilistic approach that you have to have. And you have to understand that marketing has two jobs. One is to continue to try and generate leads and clicks and all the easy measurable stuff. But the second job is to build the collective confidence of the buyer group through messaging that's much more human, much more emotional, much more socially proven than what you've done previously.
I think just to jump in there as well, one of the things that Jan, myself, Jamie Cleghorn at Bain have talked about, Steve, the three of us have talked about this as well, is that what is what are the levers that marketers can pull on? And within B2B, recommendation is an incredibly powerful lever. If we had tried to think about separating off the biggest brands, like the biggest brands are the biggest brands, and they have a massive footprint in any category, whatever category it is, there's a massive footprint. And the rules are slightly different. If you're big, your job is to keep on being big. I mean, that's your route to survival, is just keep on being big, right? But what if you're not? What if you're in the 4 to 20 in a category? What things can you do that give you a kind of asymmetric advantage? And I think building the idea that your business is good to do business with is a huge lever. And it's not really what marketing sets out to do. Our research showed that there are actually two different tribes within the buyer group. One is obviously the target user who's going to use the product, who's a technical expert, and they have about half of the influence in the buyer group. But the other half are functions like legal, HR, procurement. These are functions that are principally purchase process experts. They actually just, somebody else's job is to work out, is that product right for us? Our job is to work out, is this company right for us to do business with? And that is hugely under-leveraged as a marketing communications opportunity, because marketers typically try to reach target buyers, and they think that if they follow them through the funnel through a trying to tie down all these signals, that can somewhat convert into 0.01% of a conversion, and that 1 in every 1,000 is going to actually convert to a conversion, and we've done our job. But really, the hidden buyers that we describe are people who have huge amounts of influence, who don't really click on things, but are really looking for the answer, are these guys safe to do business with? So there are many marketing levers that you can pull. It could be amping up customer recommendations, understanding that when people are looking for recommendations, they're looking for a recommendation from a company like theirs. Steve and Mimi might work for similar companies who want similar things. When I see Steve saying, oh, actually, when I used that ERP system, it actually really worked for me, and I was able to do our workflow management, and it worked for a company, my company, which looks like your company, Mimi. Those are the things that I'm looking for. And actually, it brings a much more relational and personalized and authentic dimension to things that marketers can do. And that's actually what we're pretty excited about. And we do believe that we're just scratching the surface on the value of the relational levers that marketers can pull.
So with that, anything else you'd like to share before we close out the conversation? I mean, I think this has been hugely valuable. It would be great to talk about what's next. What can folks expect from us in the next couple of months as we continue to dive into this conversation around B2B buying?
I think a huge thing for us is to better understand what are the true drivers of B2B buying decisions in a group context, and how can you influence those drivers of buying decisions in a way that goes beyond just leads, right? We have to acknowledge that leads are a very simplistic way of understanding success in marketing. It's a necessary component to generate leads, but it's actually much more important to generate the right leads and to surround those individuals who count as a lead with messaging that their peers, who are also members of the buyer group, understand, and that they get reassured by that, and they collectively have confidence that then actually results in accelerated sales pipeline, better conversion, larger deal sizes, better customer lifetime value. Those are actually the true metrics. And because it is so difficult at the moment still to get the right signals to prove that, people fixate on metrics like cost per leads or how many leads they've generated. And they're doing that at the expense of truly understanding the relationships that are necessary to actually drive sales and create sustainable growth in the long term. I think seeing B2B marketing as a cost center rather than a growth driver, seeing B2B marketing as just an on-ramp for sales rather than a complementary motion to the sales motion. It supports the sales motion, but it also complements it in different ways by building the collective confidence of the whole buyer group, not just by generating leads. That's incredibly important. We need to understand that better because we can unlock tremendous value as an industry if we understand that better.
And I think just if I can bring it right sort of back to the matrix, I think what we're really trying to do is to understand the problem better. You know, understanding the actual problem of how to make B2B products and services more buyable, which I think is the job of marketers, or at least the area where marketers and sellers have the most influence. I just think that's an open question, and that we're scratching the surface by looking at the models that might be true for what's happening in this space. And I think that there are other thinkers out there. There are behavioral people like Rory Sutherland. There are cultural and organizational thinkers like Marcus Collins. There are financial go-to-market experts like Bain. There are agencies who have specialists in this area. There's people like the IAA and the ANA, and they're all coming together to try and define a problem that we can more effectively solve. We're, I feel like, seeing flashes in the darkness, but it is a really exciting problem, and defining the problem better helps you understand where you need to make progress. And I think that's what we're trying to do. That's why it's a process, not something that we've arrived at or solved.
Well, Mimi, Jan, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, I think if we can take some key things away from this conversation, you know, we really should be thinking about, as B2B marketers, taking that red pill and opening our eyes to sort of some of the realities of how folks are actually buying, which is buying via group decision-making versus that individual decision-making. So to close this out, to our listeners and viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter to make sure that you are a part of the collective conversation as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.